Tonight, we enter the shadows of feudal Japan as we stealthily traverse the dangerous world of Tenchu. If you find that these deadly tales resonate with your inner shinobi, please feel free to leave a like and consider subscribing for more content like this. It helps ensure that Rikimaru and Ayame can continue their shadowy adventures while shining some light on this small channel. But for now, sip some herbal tea and get cozy as we embark on another deadly mission into the world of Tenchu. Rikimaru knelt silently on the polished wooden floor of Lord Goda's chamber, his head bowed in respect. The flickering light from paper lanterns cast long shadows across the room. Lord Goda sat on an elevated platform, his face grave as he studied the scroll before him. "Rise, my shadow," Lord Goda commanded, his voice carrying the weight of authority. Rikimaru stood with fluid grace, his face impassive. "3 of my officials have been assassinated in a month," Goda began, rolling the scroll closed. "Each killed with precision that speaks of trained assassins. Yet no clan has claimed responsibility." "I will find who is responsible, my lord," Rikimaru replied, his voice even and measured. Goda nodded. "The latest victim was Tanaka, my tax collector for the eastern province. He was found with this." He held out a small object. Rikimaru approached and took it from his lord's hand. A small jade carving of a serpent, its body coiled and ready to strike. He had seen its like before, though he couldn't immediately place where. "This was left deliberately," Rikimaru observed. "Yes, a message perhaps, or a signature." Lord Goda's brow furrowed. "What troubles me most is that each assassination occurred in locations thought to be secure. The killer moves like a ghost." "Or a ninja," Rikimaru said, his mind already analyzing the possibilities. "Indeed. Which is why I turn to you. Find this assassin. Discover who employs them and why they target my officials." Lord Goda's eyes narrowed. "I fear a conspiracy forms in the shadows." Rikimaru bowed. "I will not fail you, my lord." As he turned to leave, Goda added, "Ayame will aid you on this mission. She is currently protecting my remaining council members, but I'm sure your paths will cross soon." Rikimaru nodded gratefully. Ayame's methods were aggressive, to say the least, but her skills, he knew, would provide valuable assistance. The geisha's throat opened beneath Ayame's blade in a spray of crimson. The woman hadn't been what she appeared. Beneath her elegant kimono lay the toned muscles of a trained killer, and concealed in her ornate hairpin, a poisoned needle meant for Lord Goda's advisor. "Tisk, tisk, amateur," Ayame muttered, quickly searching the body. The woman had been sent to seduce and eliminate Councillor Sekia, who now slept peacefully in the adjacent room, unaware of how close death had come. Her fingers found a folded paper tucked into the woman's obi. Unfolding it revealed a list of names, 3 crossed out in deliberate strokes. Sekia's name was 4th. Below it lay 5 more officials, all close to Lord Goda. Ayami's eyes narrowed. Her original mission had been simple surveillance, rumors of bribery, nothing more. But this was something far different. She left the body for Sakia's guards to deal with and slipped through the window into the cool night. Across the rooftops of Goda Castle, her mind worked faster than her feet. On a temple roof overlooking the grounds, Ayami pulled the list into the moonlight. The first 3 names matched officials assassinated over the past month. A coordinated effort, methodical, deliberate. Someone was systematically eliminating Lord Goda's inner circle. She tucked the list away and made a decision. Councillor Sakia would need watching, whether he knew it or not. The Azuma clan had stumbled onto a deadly plot against Goda's chief advisors, and Sakia was next on the list. The tax collector's home revealed little that the castle guards hadn't already discovered. Rikimaru moved through the darkened rooms like a ghost, absorbing details others would miss. The lack of struggle, the precision of the killing blow, a single strike to the heart. The careful arrangement of the body, hands folded across the chest, eyes closed as if in peaceful sleep. Respect for the dead, unusual for a common assassin. Rikimaru knelt beside the spot where the body had been found. The floorboards had been scrubbed clean, but his trained eyes detected the faint outline where blood had seeped between the wooden slats. He pried up one board with the tip of his blade. Beneath it, scratched into the foundation stone, was the same serpent symbol as the jade carving. This was no impulse. The killer had taken time after the assassination, removing the floorboard to leave his mark before replacing it. A sound outside, the whisper of fabric against stone, alerted him. Rikimaru became still, his breathing shallow, indistinguishable from the silence of the empty house. The window slid open without a sound. A figure entered, moving with the practiced grace of a trained assassin. The moonlight caught the glint of a blade, a long, slender sword with a distinctive curved hilt. Rikimaru remained motionless in the shadows as the intruder moved to the exact spot where he had just been kneeling. The man pried up the same floorboard, examining his hidden mark before replacing it with satisfaction. "You can stop hiding now," the man said without turning. "I know you're there, Azuma." Rikimaru emerged from the darkness, his own blade ready. "You've been expecting me." The man turned, and Rikimaru caught his first clear view of the assassin. Tall and lean, with a face half covered by a mask of dark blue cloth. Only his eyes were visible, sharp, calculating, and filled with a cold amusement. Rikimaru of the Azuma, leader at such a young age. The man offered a mocking bow. "I'm honored." "You have me at a disadvantage," Rikimaru replied, his voice betraying none of the tension he felt. "Jubei," the man said, executing a fluid combat stance, "though I doubt the name means anything to you yet. You killed the tax collector." Jubei tilted his head. "Among others, they were corrupt, taking more than their share from Lord Goda's people. I merely balanced accounts. You left your mark. You wanted to be found. I wanted you to find me, he admitted. The legendary Rikimaru. I wondered if you would recognize my signature. The Jade Serpent. Rikimaru's mind worked through old lessons, stories passed down through the Azuma clan. The Shadow Serpents, a clan of assassins thought destroyed 20 years ago. Jubei's eyes crinkled with what might have been a smile beneath his mask. Not destroyed, transformed, reborn. Under your leadership, let's just say I have a personal interest in their resurrection, he said. The Jade token was meant for you, Rikimaru, a reminder of debts unpaid. Rikimaru's eyes narrowed. I owe you nothing. Not you personally. Your clan. Your master before you. His voice hardened. The Azuma betrayed the Shadow Serpents, left them to be slaughtered when the daimyos turned against them. Ancient history, Rikimaru replied, though his mind raced. He'd never actually seen the Azuma records from that period. Not to those who survived. Jubei's blade flashed without warning, cutting through the air. Rikimaru countered, their swords meeting with a sound like distant thunder. The force of the impact confirmed what he had suspected. Jubei was no ordinary assassin. His technique was flawless, his strength considerable. They exchanged a series of lightning-fast strikes, testing each other's defenses. Rikimaru found himself matched blow for blow, an experience rare enough to give him pause. You've trained for this, Rikimaru observed as they broke apart. Jubei nodded. Since childhood, every technique, every stance of the Azuma style, studied, countered, improved upon. To what end? Revenge for a betrayal generations old? That's merely the beginning. Jubei attacked again, driving Rikimaru back with a combination of strikes that left no opening for counterattack. Lord Goda's grandfather ordered the purge of my clan. His grandson will watch as everything he has built crumbles. Rikimaru parried a thrust that would have pierced his heart, feeling the blade slice through his sleeve instead. And you reveal your plan so easily? Rikimaru asked, seeking to understand his opponent as they fought. The masked assassin laughed. Because it doesn't matter if you know. You can't stop what's already in motion. He gestured toward the window. Even now, your partner discovers pieces of the puzzle. The mention of Ayame sent a chill through Rikimaru. If Jubei knew of her mission, he attacked with renewed vigor, forcing Jubei to defend. For a moment, he thought he saw surprise in the assassin's eyes. Worried about her? He taunted. Don't be. The lady of my clan's house will make her death memorable. Rikimaru's calm shattered. He roared as he thrust forward, earning a cut on the assassin's shoulder. Well struck, Jubei acknowledged, touching the wound. Good. It would be disappointing if the leader of the Azuma provided no challenge. The sound of approaching guards interrupted their duel. Someone had heard the clash of steel. Another time, Rikimaru, he said, backing toward the window. When we next meet, I'll show you techniques your master never taught you. Techniques he stole from the Serpents. Before Rikimaru could pursue, Jubei flung a smoke bomb to the floor. The room filled with choking darkness. By the time he reached the window, the assassin was gone. leaving only the night breeze and questions without answers. Rikimaru sheathed his blade. Ayame was in danger, if she wasn't already aware of it. He needed to find her, and quickly. But first, he needed to understand what connected the Azuma clan had with these shadow serpents. Ayame blended seamlessly with the evening crowd at the Golden Lotus Tea House. Her ninja garb replaced by a simple servant's kimono. The establishment served as a meeting place for merchants, officials, and those with coin to spend on discreet companionship. Information flowed as freely as the sake for those who knew how to listen. Her attention focused on a private room at the back, where Councillor Sakia now sat with several merchants. The sliding door remained partially open, allowing her glimpses inside as she passed. The northern road taxes have become impossible, one merchant complained. My profits are halved before my goods even reach the castle town. Sakia nodded sympathetically. A situation that may soon improve. I've recommended a review of the tax collector's practices to Lord Goda. The last man who did that ended up dead, another merchant muttered. Sakia waved a dismissive hand. A tragic coincidence. Lord Goda has his best people investigating. Ayame suppressed a snort. Best people indeed. Herself and Rikimaru, though these men would never know it. She continued her circuit through the tea house, analyzing each face, each conversation. A newcomer entered the establishment, drawing Ayame's attention immediately. A woman of striking beauty, dressed in the finest silk kimono that shimmered between deep blue and purple as she moved. Her hair was arranged elaborately, adorned with silver ornaments that tinkled softly with each step. Every male eye in the tea house followed her progress, but it was not the woman's beauty that caught Ayame's attention. It was the way she moved, fluid grace that spoke of extensive physical training beneath the feminine affectations, and the almost imperceptible scan of the room as she entered, cataloguing exits and occupants. This was no ordinary courtesan. The woman proceeded directly to Sekia's room. The councillor's face lit up with pleasure as he saw her, rising to greet her with enthusiasm that bordered on the inappropriate for a public official. Ah, Lady Miyuki, you honor us with your presence. The woman bowed gracefully. The honor is mine, Councillor. I hope I'm not interrupting important business. Never too important for the most beautiful woman in the province, Sekia assured her, making room beside him. Ayame moved closer. Gentlemen, Miyuki greeted. I hear you've been discussing the troublesome northern road taxes. The merchants exchanged surprised glances. Such matters were not typically the concern of courtesans. My family has shipping interests, she explained with a delicate laugh. One must pay attention to such dreary matters, even in my profession. One of the older merchants nodded appreciatively. A woman with beauty and business sense, rare indeed. You mentioned the tax collector's death, she continued, turning to the merchant who had spoken earlier. A terrible business. Was he not the third official to die under mysterious circumstances? Indeed, Sekia confirmed, leaning closer to Miyuki. All three worked in tax collection or treasury positions. Lord Goda suspects a disgruntled merchant may be responsible. Or perhaps someone within the castle itself, she suggested, her voice light but her eyes sharp. Someone who benefits from disrupting the financial affairs of the province. Sekia frowned. What do you mean? Only that power vacuums create opportunities, she replied, pouring sake for the counselor. When trusted officials die, their replacements often lack experience. Mistakes are made. Records are lost. Miyuki smiled. But listen to me, speaking of such morbid topics. Forgive me, gentlemen. The conversation shifted to lighter matters, but Ayame had heard enough. This, Lady Miyuki, was probing for information. But why? As Ayame passed by the room again, Miyuki looked up suddenly, their eyes meeting. For an instant, something cold and calculating replaced the courtesan's warm demeanor, a predator recognizing another hunter in her territory. Then the mask of charm returned, and she turned back to her companions. That look confirmed her suspicions. Lady Miyuki was not what she appeared to be, and Ayame was determined to find out her role in this drama. The archives beneath Goda Castle lay silent and undisturbed, thick with dust that spoke of neglect. Few had reason to consult these ancient records, accounts of lords long dead, conflicts resolved or forgotten. Rikimaru moved through the narrow aisles, a paper lantern casting just enough light to read the faded labels on scroll cases. He had come seeking answers about the Shadow Serpents and their connection to the Azuma clan. Jubei's words had disturbed him more than he cared to admit. Accusations of betrayal that contradicted everything he had been taught about his clan's history. In the furthest corner, behind a shelf that appeared untouched for decades, Rikimaru found what he sought. A cedar box, its surface worn smooth by time, bearing the Azuma crest. Inside lay a single scroll, the paper yellow with age. The document detailed a formal agreement between the two clans during a time of great unrest. The Azuma would serve Lord Goda's grandfather exclusively, while the Shadow Serpents would eliminate enemies outside the province. Neither would interfere with the other's territory or contracts. The alliance had been signed by the masters of both clans, including Shionsai, Rikimaru's own mentor. Nothing in the document suggested betrayal, but the scroll ended abruptly, as if pages had been removed. Rikimaru searched the box again and found a small, folded paper hidden in a secret compartment in the lid. Written in Shionsai's distinctive script, "The blood is on my hands alone. I made the choice that saved our clan and condemned theirs. If judgment comes, let it fall on me, not on those who followed my orders. The Serpent's heir still lives. One day, he may seek what was taken from him." Rikimaru's breath caught. Shionsai, his mentor, the man who had raised him from childhood. Had he betrayed allies to secure the Azuma clan's position? The sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Rikimaru extinguished his lantern and melted into the shadows. Counselor Sekia entered the archives with 2 castle guards. The man looked nervous, his eyes darting around the dim space. "It should be in the section on clan alliances," Sekia told the guards. "Any record of the Serpents must be destroyed immediately." Rikimaru remained perfectly still as the men searched, eventually finding the cedar box he had just examined. This is it, Sakia said, opening the box and scanning the scroll. The Alliance document. But there should be more. Execution orders, the terms of the purge. He turned to the guards. Search thoroughly. Lord Goda must never learn what his grandfather did. Why now, after all these years? One guard asked. Because they've returned, Sakia hissed. The killings bear their mark. If Lord Goda discovers that his own grandfather betrayed and executed allied ninjas after they fulfilled their contract, it would devastate him. His sense of honor wouldn't allow him to ignore such a stain on his family's history. Rikimaru listened intently. So Sakia knew of the Shadow Serpents and their connection to the recent assassinations. Yet he sought to hide this information from Lord Goda, rather than help him prepare for the threat. The guards continued searching, while Sakia examined the scroll more closely. This doesn't mention the betrayal, he muttered. Where are the other documents? From his hiding place, Rikimaru could see the man's face clearly in the lantern light. Sakia's concern seemed genuine, but something about his urgency felt wrong. Why would a counselor take it upon himself to hide historical information from his lord, unless he had something personal at stake? Rikimaru's suspicion deepened when Sakia pulled a small figurine from his robe, identical to the one found with the dead tax collector. They sent me another warning, Sakia told the guards, his voice shaking slightly. They know I've been skimming from the treasury. They're eliminating everyone involved, one by one. Then we should tell Lord Goda, one guard insisted. He could protect you. Fool! He would execute me himself if he learned of my theft, Sakia snapped. No, we find these records and destroy them. Without proof of the historical connection, Lord Goda will continue to believe these are random killings. The Azuma will hunt the assassins, and with luck, they'll kill each other. Rikimaru had heard enough. Sakia wasn't merely hiding historical shame. He was using the situation to cover his own crimes. More importantly, he knew more about the Serpents clan than he had revealed. As the men gathered what few documents they had found and prepared to leave, Rikimaru noted every detail of their conversation for his report to Lord Goda. But he would keep Shionsai's confession to himself for now. That was a matter for the Azuma clan to address internally. Once alone again, Rikimaru retrieved the original scroll from where Sakia had left it and returned it to its box. The counselor's carelessness would work to his advantage. The man clearly didn't know what he was truly dealing with, or how deep the conspiracy might go. Jubei had mentioned a lady who was pursuing Ayame. Rikimaru needed to warn her, but first he needed to understand why corrupt officials were being targeted. If Sakia's confession was accurate, the Serpents were eliminating those who had stolen from Lord Goda. Assassins with a moral code? Or was there a deeper purpose to removing these specific officials? Rikimaru slipped from the archives unseen, his next destination clear. He would meet with Ayame and share what he had learned. Together, they would need to protect Lord Goda not only from the Shadow Serpents, but potentially from traitors within his own castle. The meeting place was a small shrine on the outskirts of the castle town. Ayame perched on the shrine's sloped roof, hidden from casual view, but able to observe anyone approaching along the moonlit path. Rikimaru was late, which was unlike him. Punctuality was practically encoded in his stoic personality. Ayame drummed her fingers on her knee, impatient impatience building as she reviewed the information she had gathered. The list of names, the mysterious woman at the tea house, Sakia's strange behavior, pieces of a puzzle that refused to form a coherent picture. A sound from the forest behind the shrine, the snap of a twig, too deliberate to be an animal. Ayame went still, her hand moving to the hilt of her blade. "Ricky," she called softly, though she already knew it wasn't him. Rikimaru would never announce his presence so carelessly. No answer came, but Ayame felt the weight of eyes watching her. She rolled sideways as a throwing knife was launched from the darkness. "Impressive," came a man's voice. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in the dark garb of a shinobi. The lower portion of his face was covered with cloth, but his eyes reflected the moonlight with predatory intensity. Ayame drew her blades. "And who do I have the pleasure of killing tonight?" she asked with a grin. The man chuckled. "Spirited. Lady Kagero said you would be." He unsheathed a curved blade. "She sends her regards, by the way." "Kagero?" Ayame committed the name to memory. "I might be honored if I knew who either of you was." The assassin circled her. "My name is Kano, and I've been tasked with pitting my skills against an Azuma before my lady allows me to join her clan of serpents." Tisk, tisk. "Then she asks too much." Ayame kept her tone light, but her mind raced. This was no random encounter. Kano had been waiting for her, which meant someone knew she would come to this shrine. "Lady Kagero predicted you'd arrange to meet your partner here," Kano said, as if reading her thoughts. "So predictable, you Azuma, always following the same patterns, generation after generation." He lunged suddenly, covering the distance between them with surprising speed for his size. Ayame leapt backward, evading his first strike, but finding herself on the defensive as he pressed his attack. His style was unusual, aggressive, yet precise, with none of the flashy techniques common to most ninja clans. Each stroke of his blade seemed designed to herd her into a specific position, rather than land a killing blow. Ayame recognized the strategy too late. He was driving her toward the forest edge, where darkness would give him the advantage of his superior size and strength. She changed tactics, dropping low and sweeping her leg toward his ankle. Kano jumped over the attack with ease, but Ayame had already drawn a handful of caltrops from her pouch. She scattered them across his landing zone as she rolled away. Kano's pained curse told her at least one had found its mark. She used the momentary distraction to throw a smoke bomb, filling the area between them with thick, disorienting mist. "Tricks and toys," he mocked. "Is that all the legendary Kunoichi has to offer?" Ayame didn't respond, using sound to track his position while remaining silent herself. When his shadow materialized through the thinning smoke, she struck, a direct thrust aimed at his exposed side. Her blade met resistance, then pushed through. Kano grunted in pain, but twisted away before she could inflict a mortal wound. His counterattack caught her by surprise, the flat of his blade striking her shoulder with enough force to numb her arm temporarily. They separated, each reassessing the other. Blood darkened Kano's side, but the wound didn't appear to slow him. "First round goes to you," he acknowledged. But Lady Kagero didn't send me to kill you. Not yet. Then what's the point of this dance? She inquired. For me, a test. For you, a message. Kano reached into his garment and produced a small scroll, which he tossed at her feet. Ayame didn't take her eyes off him to look at the scroll. And if I had killed you before you could deliver your message, then I would have failed my lady. Kano shrugged, but she is rarely disappointed. Kagero knows people all too well, knows exactly what they'll do before they do it. She doesn't know me, Ayame retorted. Doesn't she? His eyes crinkled with amusement. She knew you'd come here tonight, knew you'd choose this shrine because it holds significance for the Azuma. A chill ran down Ayame's spine. The shrine did indeed hold significance. It was where Azuma Ninjas traditionally met when operations went awry. But that knowledge was supposed to be restricted to clan members. Who is Lady Kagero? She demanded. Someone who knows the Azuma better than they know themselves. Kano backed away, moving toward the tree line. Read the scroll and tell Rikimaru that Jubei is looking forward to concluding their unfinished business. Before Ayame could pursue, Kano threw something to the ground that erupted in a blinding flash. By the time her vision cleared, he had vanished into the forest. Ayame approached the scroll cautiously, checking it for traps before picking it up. Inside was a message written in elegant calligraphy. The shadow serpents, remember what the Azuma wish to forget. 3 officials have paid for their corruption. 6 more will follow. When Lord Goda's administration crumbles from within, he will know the same despair felt by those his grandfather betrayed. You and Rikimaru are welcome to try stopping us. It will make our victory all the better. The past cannot be buried forever. Signed, Kagero. Ayame rolled the scroll closed, her mind working through the implications. This wasn't random killing. It was calculated vengeance against Lord Goda, enacted through the systematic elimination of his corrupt officials. And somehow, the Azuma clan was central to this vendetta. The sound of approaching footsteps alerted her. This time, she recognized the nearly silent gate. "You're late," she called, as Rikimaru emerged from the shadows. "I was detained," he replied, his eyes scanning the area. "You've had company." Ayame held up the scroll. "We have a problem. Some ninja clan called the Shadow Serpents has a grudge against both Lord Goda and the Azuma clan, and they're killing officials to destabilize his rule." Rikimaru's expression remained impassive, but Ayame knew him well enough to see the tension in his shoulders. "The Shadow Serpents," he repeated. "I've learned something of them as well. It seems our past has returned to haunt us." "Our past, or our mentors?" Ayame asked, watching him carefully. "The message mentions betrayal by Lord Goda's grandfather. What aren't you telling me?" For a moment, she thought he might withhold information, a habit of his she found infuriating. But after a brief hesitation, he nodded. "I'll tell you everything I've discovered. But first, we need to warn Lord Goda. Councillor Sakia is both a target and a traitor. He's been stealing from the treasury." Ayame's eyes widened. "Then the serpents are targeting corrupt officials specifically?" "Yes, but their ultimate goal is Lord Goda himself." Rikimaru's gaze moved to the bloodstains on the ground. "Your visitor, did they identify themselves?" Kano. He works for someone named Kagero. Ayami handed him the scroll. And he mentioned someone called Jubei, who apparently has unfinished business with you. Rikimaru's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We've met. He's dangerous, Ayami. Perhaps the most skilled opponent I've faced. Coming from Rikimaru, that admission was significant. Ayami nodded, accepting the gravity of their situation. Then we'd better move quickly, she said. Sekiya may not survive the night. As they disappeared into the darkness, heading toward Goda Castle, Ayami couldn't shake the feeling that they were being manipulated. Pieces moved deliberately across a board in a game whose rules they didn't fully understand. The merchant district fell silent as midnight approached. Shops locked tight and streets emptied of all but the occasional patrol. Rikimaru moved across rooftops, his passage marked only by the slightest shifting of shadows. Below, 4 of Lord Goda's guards escorted Councillor Sekiya through the deserted streets. After receiving his report, Lord Goda had ordered Sekiya placed under guard, ostensibly for his protection, but in reality to prevent his escape while his financial crimes were investigated. The councillor had protested his innocence, but the evidence Rikimaru had gathered was damning. What interested him now was not Sekiya's guilt, but his connection to the shadow serpents. The councillor clearly knew more than he had revealed, and his fear suggested he might attempt to contact conspirators. Lord Goda had agreed to Rikimaru's plan to allow Sekiya limited movement under surveillance. The procession halted at a large merchant house bearing the crest of the Ishikawa Trading Company. Sekiya exchanged words with the guards, who took positions outside as he entered alone. A second-floor window stood slightly ajar, careless but convenient. Rikimaru scaled the wall silently and slipped inside, finding himself in an empty guest chamber. Voices drifted from below, and he moved to a ventilation grate in the floor that overlooked a private meeting room. Sekiya paced nervously before 3 seated figures. One Rikimaru recognized as Ishikawa himself, a wealthy merchant with connections throughout the province. The second was a military officer whose insignia marked him as Commander Takeda, head of Lord Goda's border forces. The third was a woman whose back was turned to Rikimaru's position. "You were followed," the woman stated, her voice smooth and cultured. "Guards, not shadows," Sekiya replied irritably. "Lord Goda suspects me of financial impropriety, nothing more." "Yet you requested this meeting," Ishikawa observed, "risking exposure for all of us." "Because 3 of our associates are dead," Sekiya hissed. "The shadow serpents have returned. They're eliminating everyone involved in our operation, one by one." The woman shifted slightly. "The serpents are a myth, a boogeyman used to frighten corrupt officials." "There have already been attempts on my life," Sekiya snapped. "They know about our arrangement, the treasury skimming, the military supply contracts, everything." Commander Takeda leaned forward. "If this truly is the work of the dishonored clan, then this isn't about our corruption. It's about revenge against Lord Goda's family, which makes us expendable targets," Ishikawa concluded. "We die, Lord Goda's administration weakens, and they achieve their real objective." "Then we should warn Lord Goda," the woman suggested, her tone reasonable. "Reveal the historical grievance while downplaying our own activities." Sakia laughed bitterly. And admit we've been stealing from him for years? He'd have us executed before the shadow serpents could reach us. Then what do you propose? Takeda asked. We eliminate the threat ourselves. Sakia lowered his voice, forcing Rikimaru to strain to hear. We know they're using the abandoned temple in the western forest as their base. We could hire mercenaries to attack ninjas in their own stronghold. Ishikawa interrupted incredulously. Suicide. Not if we draw them out first, the woman countered, rising from her seat and turning. Rikimaru's breath caught. It was the same woman Ayami had described from the tea house, the one who had called herself Lady Miyuki. But Sakia and the others addressed her differently. Lady Kagero has a point, Takeda said. If we could lure them into the open. Rikimaru went perfectly still. Kagero, the same name Ayame had mentioned, the woman working with Jubei. Yet here she was, apparently conspiring with the very officials the serpents were eliminating. The Azuma can be our bait, Kagero continued, her face serene, but her eyes calculating. Lord Goda has already assigned them to investigate the killings. If we provide them with information about Jubei's hideout in the Western Temple, he'd investigate immediately, Takeda finished, drawing out the serpent's best assassin. And while they're occupied with each other, we quietly disappear with our accumulated wealth, Sekia added, visibly relieved. It could work. Ishikawa frowned. But if the Azuma fail, then we implement our contingency, Kagero interrupted smoothly. The disappearance of Lord Goda's daughter would certainly distract him from financial discrepancies. Rikimaru's hand moved instinctively to his blade. A threat against Princess Kiku crossed a line he could not allow. But revealing himself now would lose the opportunity to learn more about their conspiracy. Kidnapping the princess is too risky, Sekia objected. Our men are loyal to Lord Goda. Your men follow orders and enjoy the extra payment you provide from our arrangement, Kagero reminded him. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. The Azuma's intervention should buy us the time we need. Rikimaru's eyes narrowed. These conspirators were using the Shadow Serpent's vendetta as cover for their own crimes. Worse, Kagero appeared to be playing both sides, somehow connected to both the Serpents and this circle of corrupt officials. As the meeting continued, Rikimaru slipped back through the window and onto the rooftop. He needed to report to Lord Goda immediately, but something held him back. The temple in the western forest. Was it truly the Serpent's base, or another deception? The pieces didn't fit together. If Kagero was working with Jubei and the Shadow Serpents, why conspire with their targets? Unless... A new possibility formed in Rikimaru's mind. What if Lady Kagero was using both sides? The corrupt officials believed she was one of them, while Jubei and his assassins considered her an ally in their vengeance. She could be playing a deeper game, with objectives beyond either faction's understanding. Movement at the front of the merchant house caught his attention. The guards escorting Sakia had been joined by additional men, not castle guards, but mercenaries bearing concealed weapons. The counselor emerged, looking more confident than when he had entered. Rikimaru made his decision. He would follow Sekia, hoping the counselor would lead him to whatever contingency plan the conspirators had prepared. As he shadowed Sekia's expanded entourage through the darkened streets, Rikimaru reflected on the web of deception surrounding him. The Shadow Serpents sought vengeance for historical betrayal. Corrupt officials scrambled to escape justice, And somewhere in the middle, a mysterious woman manipulated both sides toward an unknown goal. But one truth remained clear. His duty to protect Lord Goda and his family transcended all historical debts or personal vendettas. The Western Temple, however, remained a question mark in his mind. If this Jubei was hiding there, he might hold answers about the past that both the Azuma clan and Lord Goda's family had tried to bury. Answers that Rikimaru increasingly believed he needed to find, regardless of what uncomfortable truths they might reveal. Princess Kiku's chambers were among the most secure in Goda Castle, with guards posted at every approach. Yet Ayame slipped past their defenses with ease. After receiving the message that Rikimaru had gone to follow Sekiya, Ayame had taken it upon herself to ensure the princess's safety. If corrupt officials were desperate enough to consider kidnapping as a distraction, additional protection was warranted. She perched in the rafters above Kiku's sleeping chamber, watching the young princess slumber peacefully, unaware of the dangers gathering around her father's administration. A movement at the window drew Ayame's attention, a shadow detaching itself from the greater darkness outside. Ayame's hand moved to her blade, but she remained hidden, curious to see who would be bold enough to infiltrate Kiku's chambers. A slender figure slipped through the window, moving with the silent grace of a trained assassin. In the dim moonlight filtering through paper screens, Ayame recognized the elegant profile of the woman from the tea house, Lady Miyuki, or as she now knew, Kagero. Instead of approaching the sleeping princess, however, Kagero moved to a lacquered cabinet in the corner of the room. She picked the lock and removed a small wooden box, opening to reveal a royal seal. Princess Kiku's personal stamp, used to authenticate documents in her name. Ayame watched as she made a wax impression of the seal, then carefully returned the original to its place. Whatever her plan, it involved forging documents with the princess's authority, perhaps authorization for treasury withdrawals or military orders. As Kagero prepared to leave, Ayame decided to make her presence known. She dropped silently from the rafters, landing between the intruder and the window. Most visitors bring gifts when calling on a princess, Ayame chided. Not take them. To her credit, Kagero showed no surprise at Ayame's appearance. Her lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The little mouse from the tea house, she observed. I wondered when you would reveal yourself. I could say the same about you, Ayame replied, blocking her path to the window. Lady Miyuki to some, Lady Kagero to others. Who are you really? Someone who recognizes value in flexibility, she answered, her posture relaxed but alert. Like you, I wear different faces for different purposes. Unlike me, you're stealing from a princess while plotting against her father. Kagero tilted her head. Is that so different from what the Azuma do? You kill on command, justifying it as loyalty while ignoring the moral implications. We serve with honor, Ayame countered. Not for personal gain. Honor? The woman laughed softly. Ha! Ask Rikimaru what he knows about Shiunsai's honor, about how the Azuma secured their position with Lord Goda's family. The reference to secrets Rikimaru might have uncovered gave Ayame pause. She knew her partner well enough to recognize when he withheld information, as he had during their brief meeting at the shrine. Kagero noticed her hesitation. He hasn't told you everything, has he? Typical of Azuma leadership, keeping secrets even from their own. Enough deflection, Ayame said, refocusing. The seal impression. What are you planning? Insurance, she replied simply. The world is changing, little ninja. Lord Goda's power is waning while merchants and military leaders gain influence. The wise adapt to such changes rather than fighting them. By stealing from the treasury and sabotaging the province's administration? By recognizing where true power will lie in the coming years. Kagero's hand moved to her sleeve, where Ayame suspected weapons were concealed. You could join us, you know. A kunoichi of your talents would be valuable beyond the limiting constraints of clan loyalty. I'll pass, Ayame replied dryly. Betrayal doesn't suit me. Yet it suited Shiunsai well enough, Kagero countered. Perhaps that's why Rikimaru hesitates to share what he's learned. He fears you might judge your clan's precious legacy differently. Before Ayame could respond, Princess Kiku stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly. Both women went still, waiting to see if the princess would wake. When Kiku settled back into deeper sleep, Kagero sighed. As entertaining as this conversation is, I have appointments to keep. Her hand emerged from her sleeve holding not a weapon, but a small ceramic container. Don't follow me, little mouse. My patience has limits. As does mine, Ayame replied, drawing her blade. You're not leaving with that seal impression. The woman's expression hardened. I suspected you might be difficult. She tossed the ceramic container to the floor between them. Ayame held her breath as thick smoke billowed upward. Not poison, but a potent sleeping agent that would ensure the princess remained asleep. She leapt backward, using her sleeve to filter the air as she slashed through the paper window screen, creating ventilation to draw the smoke outward. By the time the smoke cleared, Kagero had vanished, taking the wax impression with her. Damn her, Ayame hissed under her breath. Kagero was playing a far more complex game than simple vengeance or theft. She had connections to both the Serpents and the corrupt officials they targeted. She spoke of coming changes in power as if she had inside knowledge of political movements beyond the province. And most troublingly, she knew something about Shiunsai and the Azuma clan's history that Rikimaru had discovered but not shared. Ayame slipped out through a servant's passage. She needed to find Rikimaru immediately. His investigation of Sekiya would have to wait. With Kagero's possession of Kiku's seal, whatever conspiracy they faced had accelerated. The abandoned shrine in the western forest stood in eerie silence, moonlight filtering through broken roof tiles to illuminate crumbling stone guardians. Moss and vines claimed the once sacred structure, nature reclaiming what humans had forsaken. Yet, recent footprints in the soft earth told Rikimaru that the shrine was not as abandoned as it appeared. He had followed Sekiya to a merchant warehouse where the counselor had met briefly with mercenaries, exchanging coins for promises. Then, Instead of returning to the castle, Sakia had slipped away alone, heading west toward the forest. Rikimaru had tracked him to this forgotten shrine before losing his trail in the surrounding woods. Now, as midnight passed into the early hours of morning, Rikimaru moved silently through the shrine's outer courtyard, alert for traps or sentries. The air felt charged, as if the very stones watched his progress. "I wondered when you would find this place," came a voice from the shadows. Rikimaru turned slowly, his hand resting on his sword hilt. Jubei stood beneath the shrine's broken torii gate, as still as the stone guardians flanking him. "Sakia led me here," Rikimaru said, though I suspect that was by design rather than carelessness. The assassin inclined his head. "Perceptive. The counselor's fear makes him useful. He believes he's buying his safety by luring you here. Is this truly your base?" Rikimaru asked, glancing around the decaying shrine. "Or another layer of misdirection?" "On the contrary," Jubei said, stepping into the moonlight. "This place holds significance beyond tactical considerations. It was here that your master, Shiunsai, made his bargain with Lord Goda's grandfather, the bargain that condemned my clan to extermination." Rikimaru's eyes narrowed. "I found records of an alliance between our clans. Nothing about betrayal." "Of course not. History is written by survivors. The Shadow Serpents and the Azuma were once equals who respected each other's territory and skills. When the northern daimyos threatened Lord Goda's grandfather, both clans were contracted to eliminate the threat." "And did you?" Rikimaru asked, maintaining distance. "With perfect efficiency, 17 targets eliminated in a single night without a trace of evidence, a masterwork of assassination." Jubei's voice hardened. "Our reward was betrayal. While the Serpents celebrated their success, Goda's troops surrounded our compound. Shiunsai himself led the attack." Rikimaru thought of Shiunsai's hidden note. "The blood is on my hands alone. I made the choice that saved our clan and condemned theirs." "If what you say is true," Rikimaru conceded, "it was dishonorable. But that was generations ago. The officials you're targeting now had nothing to do with those events." "No, they merely steal from the grandson of the man who ordered our destruction." Jubei's hand moved to his blade. "We eliminate corruption while working toward a greater justice. Two purposes served by the same actions." "And Kagero? What purpose does she serve?" Rikimaru asked, watching for any reaction. "She conspires with the very officials you target." For the first time, Jubei's composure faltered slightly. "You're misinformed. She is loyal to our cause." "I observed her meeting with Sekiya, Ishikawa, and Commander Takeda," Rikimaru pressed. "They consider her an ally in their corruption." "Impossible," he snapped, though uncertainty tinged his voice. "She infiltrates their circle to gather information, nothing more." Rikimaru saw the opening, not physical, but psychological. His faith in Kagero might be a vulnerability. "She proposed kidnapping Princess Kiku as a distraction," Rikimaru continued. "Latest intel reveals she made wax impressions of the princess's seal to forge documents. Are these the actions of someone loyal to your cause of justice?" The assassin's eyes narrowed. You lie to create division. I report what Ayame witnessed herself, Rikimaru countered. For a moment, Jubei seemed torn between anger and uncertainty. Then his jaw tightened. Enough talk, he declared, drawing his blade in a single fluid motion. You came seeking the Serpent's best assassin. You found me. Now prove yourself worthy of the Azuma's reputation. Rikimaru drew his own sword, the metal catching moonlight as he settled into a defensive stance. I didn't come to fight you. Your quarrel is with ghosts, not me. You inherited Shiunsai's position, Jubei replied coldly. You inherit his debts as well. He attacked without further warning, his blade whistling through the air with deadly precision. Rikimaru parried the strike, the impact reverberating through his arms. Jubei was even faster than during their first encounter, his technique flawless. They exchanged a series of lightning-quick strikes, testing defenses, searching for weaknesses. Rikimaru found none. Every approach was anticipated, every counter prepared for. You fight like Shiunsai, Jubei observed, as they circled each other after the initial exchange. He trained you well. You seem familiar with his technique, Rikimaru replied, matching his opponent's strikes. I should be. I studied it for 20 years. Jubei launched another attack, this time using a combination that Rikimaru recognized from his own training, a sequence specific to the Azuma style. He countered with the appropriate response, then immediately shifted to an unorthodox movement to break the pattern. Their duel intensified, moving from the courtyard into the shrine itself. Rotted floorboards creaked beneath their feet as they maneuvered through the abandoned space. Jubei drove him back with a relentless series of strikes, each one precisely aimed at vital points. Rikimaru found himself giving ground, forced onto the defensive by Jubei's superior reach and power. He needed to change the dynamic of their encounter. When his opponent committed to a powerful overhead strike, Rikimaru didn't attempt to block it directly. Instead, he pivoted, letting the blade pass within inches of his shoulder as he moved inside Jubei's guard. His own blade flashed upward, aiming for the exposed section of his torso. The assassin twisted away with remarkable speed, but not before Rikimaru's sword opened a shallow cut across his ribs. Ah, very good, Jubei acknowledged, touching his wound. But now, it's my turn. He charged again, his movements taking on a new intensity. Rikimaru recognized the change in strategy. Jubei was no longer testing him, but fighting to kill. Their blades met with increasing force, the sound of steel on steel echoing through the abandoned shrine. Rikimaru matched his aggression, but found himself countering techniques he had never seen before, variations on Azuma moves that Shiunsai had never taught him. Surprised, Jubei asked, noticing his momentary hesitation. These are the true Azuma techniques, the ones Shiunsai stole from my master before betraying him. The accusation distracted him just enough for Jubei's blade to slip past his guard, slicing across his shoulder. Pain flared, but Rikimaru controlled his reaction, using the moment to counter with a thrust that the assassin barely evaded. Both men were bleeding now, their breathing controlled but labored as they continued their deadly dance. The wooden floor beneath them groaned with each movement, ancient timbers weakened by decades of neglect. Rikimaru heard the crack an instant before the floor gave way. He leapt backward as the center of the shrine collapsed, creating a chasm between him and Jubei. Dust and debris filled the air, temporarily obscuring his vision. When it cleared, they stood on the opposite side of the collapsed floor. "Fate intervenes," Jubei observed. "Perhaps our duel is meant to conclude another time." "This vendetta serves no purpose," Rikimaru called across the divide. "The past cannot be changed." "No, but the future can be shaped by it." Jubei sheathed his blade. "Ask yourself this, Rikimaru. If Shiunsai lied about our clan's history, what else did he conceal? What other sins hide behind the Azumas' vaunted honor?" Before he could respond, the shrine's remaining structure groaned ominously. The collapse was spreading, the entire building beginning to succumb to age and damage. "We'll finish this soon," Jubei promised, backing toward an exit. "But first, verify what I've told you. Ask Lord Goda about the Night of Serpents. See if he knows what his grandfather did, what your master helped accomplish." With those words, the assassin disappeared through a side door as more of the shrine's roof caved in. Rikimaru had no choice but to retreat as well, making his way out through a window as the ancient structure finally surrendered to time and gravity. Outside, in the pre-dawn forest, Rikimaru bound his wound with cloth torn from his sleeve. Jubei was gone, but his words remained, echoing in Rikimaru's mind. The Night of Serpents. Another piece of the historical puzzle that connected the Azuma clan to whatever betrayal had occurred. And Kagero. His reaction suggested Jubei truly believed in her loyalty. Either she had deceived him completely, or her game was even more complex than Rikimaru had initially suspected. As he made his way back toward Goda Castle, Rikimaru resolved to speak with his lord directly about this buried history. The time for secrets had passed. If they were to counter the Serpent's vengeance, they needed to understand exactly what sins they were paying for. The merchant district bustled with morning activity as vendors set up stalls and apprentices swept storefronts. Ayame moved through the crowd unnoticed, her shinobi attire replaced by the simple clothes of a merchant's daughter. Her weapons remained concealed beneath the modest kimono, ready if needed. After failing to locate Rikimaru during the night, she had decided to investigate the financial conspiracy herself. Councillor Sekia's residence had been her first target, but the place had been emptied. The councillor had fled, clearly fearing either the Serpents or Lord Goda's justice. That left Ishikawa, the wealthy merchant, whom Kagero had met with. His compound was her current destination, a sprawling estate at the edge of the merchant district, surrounded by gardens and a stone wall. Ayame approached the main gate, where 2 guards stood watch. She had prepared her cover story carefully, but improvisation had always been her strength. "Excuse me," she whispered, adopting the deferential tone expected of a young woman addressing authority. "I have a delivery for Master Ishikawa from Lady Miyuki." The guards exchanged glances at the mention of Miyuki. "The lady sent you?" one asked suspiciously. Ayame lowered her eyes. "Yes, sir. She said it was urgent that Master Ishikawa receive this before midday." She produced a small lacquered box tied with a silk cord, empty, but beautifully crafted and bearing no identifying marks. The senior guard nodded. "Wait here." He took the box and disappeared inside the compound. Ayame waited patiently, observing the second guard from beneath lowered lashes. Young, nervous, probably new to his position. The senior guard returned a moment later, carrying the box. Master Ishikawa says he doesn't know any Lady Miyuki, and he's not expecting deliveries. Ayame feigned confusion, but she was very specific. Perhaps he knows her by another name. She paused as if considering. She sometimes uses the name Kagero in certain circles. The effect was immediate. Both guards stiffened, the senior one's hand moving to his sword. "Who are you?" he demanded. "How do you know that name?" Ayame maintained her innocent expression. "I only deliver messages, sir, if there's been some confusion." "Take her inside," he ordered. "Master Ishikawa will want to question her." Perfect, Ayame thought as they escorted her through the gate. Access gained with minimal effort. The compound's interior revealed wealth beyond what most merchants could accumulate honestly. Exotic plants from southern islands, stone lanterns carved from rare mountain granite, servants in fine uniforms, all spoke of fortune that exceeded legitimate trade profits. They led her to a courtyard garden where Ishikawa sat examining financial scrolls. "Master," the senior guard bowed. This woman brought a delivery supposedly from Lady Miyuki, but then mentioned the other name. Ishikawa looked up, his expression unreadable as he studied her. "Leave us," he told the guards. Once they had retreated out of earshot, he gestured to a cushion across from him. "Sit." Ayame obeyed, maintaining her cover while studying the courtyard for escape routes and potential weapons. "You're either very brave or very foolish," Ishikawa said quietly. "That name is not spoken casually." "Forgive me," she replied, her eyes downcast. "I was told to use it only if there was confusion about the delivery." Ishikawa's eyes narrowed. "Open the box." Ayame reached for the lacquered box, buying time as she considered her options. The empty container would expose her ruse immediately. She needed to change tactics. "Before I do," she said, letting her demeanor shift subtly, her voice losing its deferential tone. "Perhaps you should know that Councillor Sekiya has fled the province, perhaps fearing discovery of his connection to the treasury thefts." Ishikawa went very still. "Who are you?" "Someone offering you a choice, Master Ishikawa," she said, a sharp edge returning to her tone. "Cooperate with Lord Goda's investigation, or face both his justice and the Serpents' vengeance." The merchant's hand moved toward a cord that would summon his guards. Ayame was faster, producing a throwing knife that embedded itself in the wooden table between them. "I wouldn't," she advised. "Your guards are no match for me, and calling them would eliminate your opportunity to save yourself." Ishikawa withdrew his hand slowly. You're Azuma," he stammered. "The Kunoichi, Ayame." "Very good," she acknowledged. "Now, about those financial records in front of you. They detail the treasury theft, don't they?" Ishikawa's shoulders slumped slightly. "Not theft. Reallocation. Lord Goda's taxation has been strangling trade. We simply balanced the scales. By stealing from your lord and funneling money to rival provinces." Ayame kept her tone conversational as she scanned the documents on the table. "That sounds like treason, as well as theft." "Politics is more complex than your simplistic loyalty allows you to understand," he retorted. Lord Goda's position is weakening. New powers emerge from the north. We positioned ourselves to survive the coming changes. With Kagero's guidance? She prompted. Ishikawa hesitated, then nodded. She has connections throughout the provinces. Information about troop movements, political alliances. She foresaw Lord Goda's decline before anyone else. And suggested you begin siphoning funds from his treasury as insurance, Ayame concluded, while also working with the shadow serpents to eliminate officials who might expose the scheme. Confusion crossed Ishikawa's face. The shadow serpents? That's just a story to frighten children. Tell that to the 3 dead officials with jade serpents left on their bodies, Ayame countered. Kagero is playing both sides, Ishikawa. She works with assassins targeting corrupt officials while simultaneously helping those officials steal from Lord Goda. The merchant paled visibly. Impossible. She's been our most valuable ally. She's using you, Ayame said flatly. The question is, for what purpose? What happens when all the designated officials are dead and Lord Goda's administration is in chaos? Ishikawa's eyes widened as he processed the implications. The Northern Lords. They've been massing troops near the border for months. Commander Takeda assured us it was routine training, but if Takeda is compromised and treasury funds meant for military supplies have been diverted, she let the conclusion hang in the air. Invasion, Ishikawa whispered. We've been helping destabilize the province before an invasion. Ayame leaned forward. Tell me everything you know about Kagero's plans. Every meeting, every instruction, every document she's had access to. For a moment, Ishikawa looked like he might refuse. Then resignation crossed his face. It began almost 2 years ago, when she approached me with information about trade routes the northern provinces were developing. Information that allowed me to undercut their merchants and secure contracts that should have been impossible to obtain. As Ishikawa detailed the conspiracy, Ayame committed each fact to memory. The scope was greater than she had imagined, not just treasury theft, but systematic weakening of Lord Goda's military and diplomatic position, creating vulnerabilities that enemies could exploit. The final phase was to begin next week, Ishikawa concluded. With Princess Kiku's seal, Kagero planned to authorize a massive transfer of funds from the main treasury to outposts along the northern border. Outposts secretly controlled by Commander Takeda's corrupt officers. And with those funds gone and key officials dead or discredited, Lord Goda would be unable to mount an effective defense against invasion. Ayame finished. Ishikawa nodded miserably. I never intended treason, only profit. Intention means little compared to consequence, she replied, gathering the most incriminating documents from the table. These will go to Lord Goda. Your cooperation may be considered when he determines your punishment. She'll kill me if she discovers I've spoken to you, Ishikawa said, genuine fear in his voice. Then I suggest you find somewhere very remote to hide, Ayame advised, rising from her cushion. And quickly. As she turned to leave, Ishikawa called after her. There's something else you should know. Kagero isn't just working with the Northern Lords. She mentioned someone called Jubei, said he was too focused on personal vengeance to see the larger opportunity, that once the Azuma were eliminated, the real power play would begin. Ayame paused. The Azuma eliminated? The pieces finally clicked into place. Kagero was manipulating both the shadow serpents and the corrupt officials, positioning them against each other and against the Azuma. The historical vendetta was real, but it served as cover for a more contemporary power grab. "Thank you for this information," she said. "It may have just saved more lives than your own." Once clear of the compound, Ayami moved swiftly toward Goda Castle. The evidence she had gathered confirmed their worst fears and revealed new dimensions to the threat, not just assassination and corruption, but the prelude to an invasion. Lord Goda's face had grown increasingly grave as Rikimaru recounted what he had learned. The historical betrayal, the current conspiracy, and the threat of invasion from the northern provinces. Now, as morning sunlight filled the private audience chamber, the Lord sat in troubled silence. "These accusations against my grandfather," Lord Goda finally said, "they cannot be dismissed easily. The records from that era are incomplete, but there are inconsistencies I have noticed." "The Night of Serpents," Rikimaru prompted. "Jubei mentioned it specifically." Lord Goda nodded slowly. "A dark chapter my father spoke of only once, when very ill near the end of his life. He said his father, my grandfather, had made a terrible choice to secure our family's position. That blood had purchased our peace." He met Rikimaru's gaze directly. "If what you've discovered is true, then the Shadow Serpents have a legitimate grievance against my family." "Their grievance may be legitimate," Rikimaru acknowledged, "but their methods threaten innocent lives. And this, Lady Kagero, appears to be manipulating their vendetta to facilitate an invasion." "Yes, the immediate threat takes precedence over historical wrongs," Lord Goda agreed. He rose, moving to a lacquered cabinet from which he withdrew a small wooden box. "This was passed to me by my father, with instructions to open it only if the serpent returned." Inside lay a folded document bearing both the Goda family seal and another mark, the coiled serpent Rikimaru had come to recognize. "A contract," Lord Goda explained, "between my grandfather and the Shadow Serpents. They were to eliminate 17 rivals who threatened our position. In return, they would receive gold, territory, and official recognition as equals to the Azuma." Rikimaru examined the document carefully, but they were betrayed instead. "So it appears." Lord Goda's expression was pained. "My grandfather feared their growing power. The contract includes a list of the 17 targets, all legitimate threats to our rule, but also all witnesses to the arrangement with the Serpents clan. Once they were eliminated, the assassins became a liability rather than an asset," Rikimaru finished. "And Shiunsai helped eliminate them." Lord Goda nodded grimly. "Honor demands I acknowledge this wrong and offer reparation to the survivors. But first, we must secure the province against both Kagero's conspiracy and the northern threat." "I believe I can resolve the situation," Rikimaru said. "Jubei seeks justice for historical wrongs, not conquest. If presented with the truth and an honorable resolution, he may withdraw from Kagero's conspiracy." "Can you be certain?" Lord Goda asked. Vengeance often blinds men to reason. No, Rikimaru admitted, but I must try. Ayame has gathered evidence against the corrupt officials. With that information, you can secure the treasury and military against immediate threats. Lord Goda considered this, then nodded decisively. Very well. I authorize you to negotiate with Jubei if possible. Offer acknowledgement of the historical wrong and appropriate reparations, but if he cannot be reasoned with... I understand, my lord. Rikimaru bowed. The safety of your people comes first. As he prepared to leave, Lord Goda added, Shionsai was a good man who made a terrible choice. Remember that even the most honorable among us can be forced into dishonorable actions by circumstance. Rikimaru paused. Did he ever speak of it to you? Only once, Lord Goda replied softly. He said it was the heaviest burden he carried, that he had sacrificed his personal honor to preserve the clan. He hoped you would never face such a choice. With those words weighing on his mind, Rikimaru departed the castle. Ayame had left word that she would continue investigating Kagero's movements, leaving Rikimaru to confront Jubei one final time. The location was obvious. If the abandoned shrine held significance as the site of the original betrayal, there was only one other place that would complete the circle: the execution ground where the shadow serpents had been eliminated. Historical records placed it at the base of Mercy Falls, where the river formed a natural boundary at the province's edge. The journey took most of the day, the terrain growing increasingly rugged as Rikimaru approached the falls. The roar of water became audible long before the falls came into view, a magnificent cascade plunging over sheer cliffs into a turbulent pool below. At the edge of the pool stood a weathered stone marker, half hidden by moss and thyme. Rikimaru brushed away the growth to reveal an inscription, Justice Served. Below it, barely visible, someone had carved a small serpent. I knew you would come. Jubei's voice carried over the roar of the falls. He stood on a boulder overlooking the pool, his posture relaxed but alert. His wound from their previous encounter had been treated, though Rikimaru could see it still pained him. I spoke with Lord Goda, Rikimaru called back. He acknowledges the wrong done to your clan and offers reparation. Jubei scoffed. Ha! Reparation? For genocide? What price does he place on an entire clan of assassins? He offers truth, Rikimaru replied, producing the contract Lord Goda had given him. The official acknowledgement of both the agreement and the betrayal, your clan's name restored to history rather than erased from it. Something flickered in Jubei's eyes. A hunger not for vengeance, but for validation. He jumped down from the boulder, approaching cautiously. And what else? He asked. Truth alone doesn't balance the scales. Territory at the province's western edge. Gold equal to what was promised in the original contract. And official recognition of the Shadow Serpent's right to exist and operate within agreed boundaries. He stopped a few paces away, studying Rikimaru's face for deception. Why would he offer this now, after denying our existence for generations? Because he is not his grandfather, Rikimaru answered simply. He believes in addressing wrongs, not perpetuating them. And you, Jubei challenged, would you serve a lord who admitted to betraying allies? I serve a lord who has the courage to acknowledge mistakes and make amends, Rikimaru countered. That takes more strength than denial or continuation of violence. Jubei was silent for a long moment, the only sound the constant thunder of the waterfall. "Show me the contract," he said finally. Rikimaru held it out, allowing him to take it without approaching too closely. The assassin unfolded it carefully, his eyes scanning the document with growing intensity. "This is genuine," he murmured, almost to himself. "The seal, the terms, exactly as my master described. It confirms your clan's skill and honor," Rikimaru noted. Pride and pain warred in Jubei's expression. "My grandfather died here," he said softly. "He was the Shadow Serpent's master. Shiunsai himself executed him, I'm told. Shiunsai carried that burden until his death," Rikimaru replied softly. "He left a confession that the blood was on his hands alone." Jubei refolded the contract carefully. "And Kagero? What does Lord Goda offer her?" "Nothing. She's manipulating your vendetta to facilitate an invasion from the northern provinces. The officials you've been eliminating, their corruption was part of her scheme to weaken Lord Goda's position." "You lie," he sneered. "Kagero is the last daughter of the Serpent's founding family. She seeks justice as I do." "She seeks power," Rikimaru corrected. "Using your legitimate grievance as cover for ambition. Ask yourself, why target corrupt officials specifically? Why not strike directly at Lord Goda if vengeance was the true objective?" Doubt crept into Jubei's eyes. The strategy was to weaken him first, make him watch his administration crumble. A strategy that perfectly serves the northern lords preparing for invasion, Rikimaru pointed out. "Has Kagero spoken of allies beyond the province? Of rewards greater than what your vengeance would provide?" Jubei's silence was answer enough. Rikimaru pressed his advantage. "The choice is yours. Accept Lord Goda's acknowledgement and reparation, rebuilding your clan with honor intact, or continue as Kagero's instrument, only to discover too late that you've been used to facilitate a conquest that will destroy both our clans." For a long moment, the assassin stood motionless, his internal conflict visible in the tension of his stance. Then, with deliberate movement, he drew his blade. Rikimaru prepared himself for combat, but Jubei surprised him by turning the blade and offering it hilt first. "In the tradition of my clan," he said formally, "I offer temporary truce by the exchange of weapons. Take my blade as guarantee of my word until this matter with Kagero is resolved." Rikimaru recognized the significance of the gesture. Among assassins, no greater trust could be shown than surrendering one's primary weapon. He drew his own sword and offered it in exchange. "I accept your truce and offer the same guarantee," he replied, taking Jubei's blade while surrendering his own. As they exchanged weapons, Jubei added, "This doesn't end our reckoning, Rikimaru of the Azuma." "Agreed. Now, where do we find Kagero?" "She maintains a villa near the northern border," he answered. "Ostensibly as a meditation retreat, but I've noticed increased activity there recently. Messengers coming and going at unusual hours." "Then that's where we go," Rikimaru decided. "Together." Jubei straightened. You trust me at your back after our previous encounters? I trust your honor, Rikimaru replied, and your desire to know the truth about Kagero's intentions. A ghost of a smile appeared behind his mask. Perhaps Shiunsai taught you wisdom along with his techniques. Jubei gestured toward the forest path. The villa lies half a day's journey north. We should move quickly if we hope to arrive by nightfall. As they departed the execution ground, Rikimaru felt the weight of history shift slightly. The contract in Jubei's possession represented both acknowledgement of a historical wrong and the possibility of resolution without further bloodshed. Whether that possibility would be realized depended on what they discovered at Kagero's villa, and whether Ayame had already found her way there. The villa overlooking the northern border was deceptively serene, its elegant gardens and peaceful architecture belying the conspiracy plotted within its walls. Ayame moved through the darkness like a phantom, her eyes adjusting to the moonlight as she catalogued the compound's defenses. 4 guards at the front gate, 2 more patrolling the eastern wall. She dispatched the first guard with a silent slash across his throat, catching his body before it could hit the ground and lowering it gently behind a decorative statue. The second guard never even saw her coming, her blade finding his heart before surprise could register on his face. The eastern wall guards proved slightly more challenging. They were alert, moving in coordinated patterns that spoke of military rather than civilian training. Ayame waited for them to separate, then took the first with a throwing knife, while simultaneously closing distance with the second. He managed half a shout before her blade silenced him forever. As she moved deeper into the compound, she caught fragments of conversation from the main building. Crouching beneath a window, she listened carefully. Captain Takeda said the first wave of northern troops will cross the border within 3 days, a guard reported. Once they're committed to the invasion, Lord Goda won't have the resources to mount an effective defense. What about the treasury transfers? Another voice, female, unmistakably Kagero. All in motion. With those funds redirected to the corrupt outposts, the military supply lines will collapse before anyone realizes what's happened. Ayame's blood ran cold. The conspiracy was further advanced than she had feared. 3 days until invasion. The conspirators were preparing for Lord Goda's fall. She was searching for a secluded spot to enter the villa when a voice spoke directly behind her. "Here for a rematch, my pretty little kunoichi." Ayame spun, her blade drawn in one fluid motion. Kano stood there, his curved sword already drawn, his expression a mixture of respect and hunger for combat. "You're a hard woman to pin down," he continued, circling her slowly. "But I was holding back last time. I won't this time." "Ditto," she replied, matching his movement. They circled like predators, testing distances, searching for openings. Kano attacked without warning, his blade cutting through the air with brutal force. Ayame parried, sliding beneath his follow-up strike and counter-attacking. Their dance was faster than their previous encounter, both fighters having learned from their initial meeting. His style relied on overwhelming power and aggressive positioning. She turned this against him, using his momentum to redirect his strikes. But he was learning too, adapting his technique as they fought across the garden stones. Steel met steel repeatedly. the sound carefully controlled to avoid alerting nearby guards. Ayame noticed that he bore the wound she had given him during their first fight, still not fully healed, favoring his left side slightly. She exploited the weakness, feinting toward his right, before pivoting to attack his injured side. Kano twisted away, but not before her blade opened the wound further. He cursed in pain, but pressed forward regardless, forcing her back across the garden. The compound wall loomed behind her, no retreat possible. Ayame used the obstacle to her advantage, planting her feet and committing to a series of aggressive strikes that drove him back. For the first time, she saw uncertainty in his eyes. Pressing her advantage, she unleashed a combination of moves designed to end the fight. Kano defended desperately, his curved blade meeting her attacks with increasing desperation. Then his foot caught on a decorative stepping stone. His balance wavered for just an instant, but in combat between masters, an instant was eternity. Ayame's blade drove upward, finding his heart. Kano's eyes widened as he looked down at her sword. A smile crossed his face. "Ah," he gasped. "You truly are Azuma." He fell backward, his weapon clattering to the ground. Ayame caught him as he descended, easing his body down with respect for a worthy opponent. The sound of applause froze her in place. Ayame spun to see Kagero standing at the open garden door, clapping slowly and deliberately. Behind her stood Commander Takeda, flanked by 24 soldiers bearing the insignia of his personal guard. And spreading out to encircle Ayame were more of Takeda's men, emerging from the shadows of the compound with weapons drawn. "Magnificent," Kagero said, approaching slowly. "Truly magnificent. But I'm afraid this is the end for you." Ayame drew her blades, taking a fighting stance. "Kill her," Kagero ordered casually, turning back toward the building. "Make it quick. We have a kingdom to conquer." The soldiers advanced, weapons raised. The villa erupted into chaos as Rikimaru and Jubei burst from the tree line, moving with the synchronized precision of two warriors who had fought together, despite their history. Rikimaru's blade found the first soldier, the movement so swift the man didn't even realize he was dead before he collapsed. Jubei moved with equal efficiency, his mastery of combat evident in every strike. Ayame grinned at the sight, hope rekindling her vigor as she pressed her attack. The soldiers faltered. Their numbers meant nothing against opponents of such skill. Within moments, half their force lay defeated, the remaining soldiers scrambling to reposition. "Jubei!" Kagero's sneer cut through the chaos, laced with something between fury and confusion. "You ally yourself with the Azuma and turn against me? You used me," he snarled, advancing on her. "You used our clan's legitimate grievance as cover for your ambition." "I used what was available," she replied, backing toward the villa. The shadow serpents were a means to an end, the weakening of this pathetic province. "You're a traitor to your own bloodline." Jubei declared, drawing his blade. "And I've come to claim the blood you are unworthy of." They clashed with terrible intensity, two skilled fighters meeting in a battle that shook the ground beneath them. Kagero was not trained solely as a spy and manipulator. She possessed combat skills that matched even Jubei's formidable abilities. Their duel became a whirlwind of steel and precision, each seeking the killing stroke. Meanwhile, Rikimaru engaged Takeda directly. The corrupt commander was skilled enough, years of military training evident in his technique, but he was no match for an Azuma master. Rikimaru disarmed him with a precision strike that sent his blade clattering across the stone courtyard. "You're under arrest for treason," he stated coldly, subduing the fallen commander with swift efficiency. Nearby, Ayame had redoubled her efforts against the remaining guards. With Rikimaru's assistance, they methodically eliminated each threat. Soldiers fell, overwhelmed by the skill and coordination of the two Azuma Ninja. The battle reached its crescendo as Jubei and Kagero's duel climaxed on the villa's balcony. Rikimaru and Ayame watched as the former finally forced an opening in his opponent's defense. His blade drove forward with lethal precision, finding its target in Kagero's chest. The woman went very still. For a moment, she stared at the blade protruding from her body, as if she could not quite believe it. "You were brilliant," Jubei said quietly. "You could have been a great leader for our clan. But instead, you betrayed it." Kagero tried to speak as he removed the blade, but no words came. Her body tumbled from the balcony to the fountain below, turning the water crimson. The remaining soldiers, seeing their leader dead and their commander captured, threw down their weapons and surrendered. 3 days later, justice was administered in Goda Castle's Great Hall. Commander Takeda knelt before Lord Goda, his once proud bearing reduced to a hollow shadow. The crimes against him were extensive: treason, theft, and conspiracy to facilitate invasion. "For your betrayal of my trust and the province you were sworn to protect," Lord Goda pronounced, "you are sentenced to death. Your execution will occur at sunset." Takeda showed no reaction as guards led him away. Councillor Sekiya and Merchant Ishikawa were brought forth next. Both men looked far less certain of their fates than Takeda had been. "Your crimes are grave," Lord Goda acknowledged, "but your cooperation with the investigation and your lesser roles in the conspiracy are noted. Councillor Sekiya, you are stripped of your position and title. You will spend the remainder of your life in monastery service, reflecting on your corruption." Sekiya bowed deeply, relief washing over his face that he would live. "Merchant Ishikawa," Lord Goda continued, "the treasury theft and your involvement in the conspiracy warrant significant punishment. However, you have provided valuable information that protected this province. You will make full restitution of the stolen funds, surrender 3/4 of your assets to the crown, and live under close supervision for the remainder of your days." Ishikawa accepted his sentence with dignity, knowing he had avoided execution only through Lord Goda's mercy. Finally, Rikimaru stepped forward to present the contract recovered from the sealed archives. The agreement between Lord Goda's grandfather and the Shadow Serpents. The historical record shall be corrected, Lord Goda announced to his assembled court. The Shadow Serpents are hereby acknowledged as victims of betrayal committed by my grandfather. This crime against honor shall be rectified through formal reparation. He turned to Jubei, who stood beside Rikimaru. Territory in the Western Province, sufficient resources to rebuild your clan, and official recognition of your right to exist and operate within agreed boundaries, Lord Goda declared. This will not undo historical wrongs, but it acknowledges them truthfully and offers a path toward reconciliation. Jubei knelt in formal respect. I accept Lord Goda's acknowledgement and reparation. I pledge to honor the terms of the original contract, to serve as protectors of the province's western border against external threats. A murmur rippled through the court. To see an Azuma leader and a Shadow Serpent assassin standing together, united in service to Lord Goda, seemed to presage significant changes in the province's future. Later, as the formal proceedings concluded, Rikimaru and Ayame walked through Goda Castle's gardens with Jubei. This alliance between our clans feels strange, Jubei admitted, yet somehow right, as if we're finally correcting an ancient wrong. The Shadow Serpents and the Azuma served together before, Rikimaru replied. Perhaps that partnership can be not only restored, but strengthened. To that end, Jubei said, I have a proposal. What if we formalized a training exchange? Shadow Serpent assassins studying Azuma techniques, Azuma learning from our traditions, not as enemies seeking advantage, but as united professionals. Ayame smiled. That would have seemed impossible weeks ago. History changes when those carrying its weight choose to lay it down, he replied. Your master, Shiunsai, carried the burden of the betrayal alone. Perhaps now, both clans can share the work of healing. As the three ninja walked beneath ancient cherry trees, the promise of reconciliation hung in the air like spring blossoms ready to bloom. The conspiracy had been defeated, the corruption rooted out, and from the ashes of historical enmity, something new might grow, an acknowledgement of the past and a shared pursuit towards a stronger future. For the Shadow Serpents would rise again, but under Jubei's leadership, hope remained. The hope that in this world of shadows, the Azuma clan may gain a much-needed ally.